On June 7th, UFC 316 will take place in Newark, USA. In the main event, current bantamweight champion Merab Dvalishvili will face off in a rematch with former division leader Sean O'Malley. Also on the card, there will be a title fight between Julianna Peña and Kayla. Marlon Vera will meet Mario Bautista, Azamat Murzakanov will face Johnny Walker, and Kevin Holland will step into the Octagon for the third time in 2025. His opponent will be Vicente Luque. Today we'll discuss all these fights. Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley too. The rematch will take place without any intermediate fights for Sean, although it seemed that there was a more deserving candidate for Merab. Of course, we're talking about Peña, but in the end, the media factor took the upper hand, and we'll see Sugar in the title fight. Merab Dvalishvili. Over the past year, the Georgian fighter has finally received what he deserves. First, he won the title, and then he confidently defended it in a fight against a fighter who was considered the favorite. Merab has already proven everything to everyone, and one could say that he has cleaned out the bantamweight division, but Dvalishvili is not planning to stop and will now showcase himself in rematches. Striking technique. When it comes to Merab's striking technique, which is considered his main weakness before a fight, it's something probably every opponent is aware of. However, despite having what seems like an obvious disadvantage, no one has been able to capitalize on it, even when possessing superior skills. Yes, Dvalishvili can get hit, as reflected by his defense rate of 54%. Yes, his accuracy is not as high, with a rate of 41%, but this doesn't prevent him from looking competitive in the stand-up due to his relentless pressure. Merab is also capable of overwhelming his opponent and making them look quite clumsy, which inevitably impacts the judges' scorecards. Of course, the Georgian might get carried away. If we recall his first fight with Sean, he took a very hard shot in the 5th round and had to retreat. But even then, he didn't allow his opponent to capitalize on that moment. When Merab is focused, it's almost impossible to shake him, as was evident at the beginning of his UFC career. Wrestling and grappling. Merab's wrestling and grappling are far from perfect, as despite a vast number of takedown attempts, only 36% of them are successful. But this is where the exception to the rule comes in. It's not about the quantity, but the quality. His constant pressure and determination to take his opponent down make the Georgian the best in the division. He literally forces any opponent to look worse, as the anticipation of his moves creates problems and insecurity. Merab doesn't aim to finish his opponent. Instead, he wisely manages his energy and applies pressure throughout all rounds. By the way, his takedown defense is very solid, as Umar found out in their previous fight. Statistically, his takedown defense reaches 80%. Cardio Merab's main strength. It's no coincidence that many fighters rank him #1 in this aspect. It's hard to find a fighter, not just in the bantamweight division, but across the entire UFC roster, who could challenge the Georgian in this regard. He remains fresh towards the end of a fight and looks like he's capable of going for another 5 minutes. Interestingly, Merab is no longer young, yet he still maintains outstanding conditioning. Mentality. A true champion who carries himself in the cage with such confidence. It's as if he is competing only against himself. It's hard to doubt that anyone can break Merab mentally. And if we consider that his opponent is Sean, whom he has already faced and knows exactly what to expect, it becomes even more grim for the opponent. Sean O'Malley. Sean promised to spend the year 25 differently, quitting smoking and social media, training harder. And it seems that so far there have been no signs of him breaking his routine. Will this help Sugar improve his performance in the rematch against Merab? Or is it simply that Dvalishvili is the better fighter? Striking technique. Sean's striking technique is among the best in the division, but you have to look at the first fight with Dvalishvili to understand what he might be able to do in a rematch. Of course, he can effectively use kicks to target different levels, but only at a comfortable distance. Because if he miscalculates even slightly, Merab will immediately punish him. By the way, changing levels is crucial to prevent the Georgian from adapting, and this is something Sean can do well, as his variety of strikes is undoubtedly impressive. Incorporating powerful punches with the hands is also very dangerous. It's better to use precise jabs where Sugar doesn't put as much force, as that allows for the chance to retreat if the strike misses. Trying to land a knee when the opponent is closing in isn't the best idea, as Dvalishvili can easily evade and go for a takedown. Sean's main hope is to maintain distance and vary his attacks to the body and head of Dvalishvili. Considering how accurately Sean can strike from range, and with his incredible 62% accuracy rate, he truly has the ability to land 3 solid rounds and win the fight by decision. wrestling and grappling. Here we also need to analyze the first fight between the two. Sean defended against takedowns quite well while he was fresh, but even in the first 5 minutes, Merab managed to take him down twice with a style that's hard to ignore. Yes, as long as Sugar had energy, he was able to get back up and prevented Merab from improving his position, but that still wasn't enough to win the rounds. Of course, the primary goal should be to avoid getting taken down by the opponent, but imagining that happening against Merab is extremely difficult. Also, getting pressed against the cage is very dangerous for Sean, because Merab will immediately trap him and start gaining a clear advantage. Sugar's defense isn't bad at all. His fights with Sterling and Jan show that he holds his own quite well. However, with Dvalishvili, it's a bit different. If you're not prepared to knock the Georgian out within the first minute or outpace him for 25 minutes, you're going to face problems. Will Sean have issues with Dvalishvili's takedowns in a rematch? Of course, but after having fought him for 5 rounds in the cage, he understands what he needs to do to minimize those takedowns. Cardio. This is exactly what flows into the fight, and will determine a lot in this matchup. If Sean has indeed improved his training and stopped abusing substances, there is a chance he will be fresher in the rematch. Then, Sugar will be able to avoid uncomfortable exchanges in the octagon more often, and will have a better shot at success. Mentality. Yes, Sean lost his last fight. He lost to an opponent he will face again in the octagon. That's always mentally tough. You know you need to do much more than last time. But it's clear that Sugar has changed his lifestyle to properly prepare for the fight, so he should be mentally ready. Anthropometry. Everything here is as it was last time, with no surprises. Sean is 12 centimeters taller than Merab, 180 centimeters versus 168. His reach is also 10 centimeters longer, 183 centimeters versus 173. Therefore, Sugar will once again need to focus on working effectively from a distance. It's all quite clear. Prediction. As in the last fight, the bout may begin with Sean's activity as he tries to show Merab who the favorite is. However, the Georgian quickly put the American in his place. It's important to consider that Dvalishvili fought in January and didn't take any breaks, showing himself in fantastic shape. There's no feeling that much has changed in the past 6 months. Therefore, in this fight, he will still be able to impose his style, which will once again create a challenge for Sugar. Yes, this time, Sean will try to win more rounds, and he has a chance to do so. It's possible that by the final 5 minutes, the scorecards will be even. But in the end, Merab will pick up the pace and once again secure the win by decision. The outcome: Merab Dvalishvili wins by unanimous decision. Julianna Peña, Kayla Harrison. From the very beginning, it was clear that Kayla came to the UFC for the title. It was only a matter of time before she would have her shot at the belt, and now that moment has arrived. Will Peña be able to do anything to counter her? Julianna Peña. Julianna is the winner of one of the seasons of The Ultimate Fighter. After her victory there, she debuted in the UFC quite successfully, securing 3 consecutive wins, including victories over solid fighters like Kat Zingano and Jessica Ai. She then faced Valentina Shevchenko and lost to her via armbar in the second round. Due to the limited number of contenders for the title, the American needed just 1 victory over Sarah McMahon to earn a title shot. In December of 21, Peña faced the dominant Amanda Nunes at the time and submitted her in the second round, pulling off one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. 6 months later, the women met in a rematch, and Amanda reclaimed her title, but the fight was quite close. It was clear that after Amanda's departure, Julianna would be able to reclaim the title, which she did in her most recent fight against Raquel Pennington. Peña is capable of performing well both standing and on the ground. This was especially evident in her fights against Nunes. Julianna operates well in the stand-up, methodically breaking down her opponents without taking too many risks, relying more on counterattacks. She has strong Brazilian jiu-jitsu skills, making her a formidable force on the ground. Kayla Harrison. Kayla made a strong debut in the UFC, submitting former champion Holly Holm with a rear naked choke. Before joining the UFC, she was a dominant champion in the PFL promotion, winning their Grand Prix several times. Her only loss came against Larissa Pacheco in 2022. Kayla lost by decision, although the two fighters had met a couple of years ago, with Kayla emerging as the stronger one. Harrison is an Olympic gold medalist in judo, and her base is wrestling. She can take almost any opponent to the ground with ease. Physically, she is very strong, and her power makes her nearly impossible to stop. On the ground, she can control her opponent. land strikes, or work toward a submission. Prediction. Although Peña has already surprised the public with her fantastic victory over Nunes, this time it seems she has almost no chance. Kayla will begin to dominate the fight from the first round and continue to do so all the way to the final minute, taking the title by unanimous decision. Marlon Vera, Mario Bautista. Once a title contender, Marlon Vera will step into the Octagon against a very dangerous opponent who is on a 7-fight win streak in the UFC. It seems that Chito is at risk of becoming a test for fighters looking to break into the top ranks, and most likely, this fight will be their last chance to reverse the emerging trend. Marlon Vera. Vera has had a long career in the UFC. This fight will be his 25th in the promotion. In the first few years, he didn't perform at his best, alternating wins and losses. Since 2018, he gained momentum and secured 5 consecutive wins in just over a year. The level of competition then increased. Vera lost to Song Yadong, then faced Sean and won in the first round. In his next fight, he met Jose Aldo and lost to him by unanimous decision. After the loss to the Brazilian, he went on an impressive 4-fight winning streak, defeating solid fighters, though they were older: Frankie Edgar, Rob Font, and Dominic Cruz. In his title shot, he faced Sugar in a rematch and lost by unanimous decision. He also lost his most recent fight to Davison Figueiredo. Vera prefers to fight standing, but he has solid Brazilian jiu-jitsu skills. He is always aggressive on his feet, constantly applying pressure on his opponents. He likes to mix up strikes with both his hands and legs. If the fight goes to the ground, he feels confident thanks to his jiu-jitsu skills. Mario Bautista. Mario began his professional MMA career back in 2013 and has fought 17 times, losing only twice. In 2019, he made his UFC debut against Corey Sandhagen and got submitted in the first round. 6 months later, he fought Jin Soo Sun and won by decision. At UFC 274, he knocked out Miles Johns in the second round with a flying knee. He then fought Trevin Jones and was knocked out early in the second round. In his most recent fight, he won by decision against the legendary Jose Aldo. Bautista is a physically strong striker with a solid boxing foundation, but he is also skilled in wrestling and jiu-jitsu, as most of his victories have come by submission. Prediction. There is a high probability that the fight will take place on the feet, where Bautista will have a slight advantage. Yes, from time to time Marlon will explode in an attempt to score points, or even try to knock his opponent out, but this will not be enough as Mario is quite technical and at the peak of his abilities. This is why the American will take the win by unanimous decision. Friends, what do you think? How will these fights end? Share your fight predictions with the exact result and round in the comments. Also, let us know which fights you would be interested in seeing analyzed. This was Octagon with a breakdown of the UFC 236 fights.